Hey everyone, Frugal Taker here giving you another budget PC video. In my last video, I put together a budget PC on the Intel 4th generation Haswell platform for under $100. Armed with only an AMD HD 6870, it was okay but not ideal for the big eSports games, and it also struggled with the recent AAA titles. You can check out that video in the card that will pop up above. So now, with a bit of scavenging at my usual hangout places such as eBay, Gumtree and Facebook trade and swap groups, I was able to get hold of a HD 7870 for a bargain price of $35. The HD 7870 is the successor to the HD 6870 and was launched in early 2012. It was a $350 card at its launch, and it was AMD's third best offering, behind the HD 7970 and the HD 7950. Compared to today, where AMD's current gen RX 480 only retails for $199, it was more in line with the comparative performance of the 480, being a upper mid-range graphics card at the time. Note that the RX 480, although is the best current gen AMD card, it is still considered a mid-high-end graphics card in the AMD offering. AMD is yet to release a flagship enthusiast card in its latest series and will probably be with the RX 5 series that's coming up. Anyway, back to the HD 7870. I'll be swapping it with the HD 6870 in the $100 PC to see how much of a more oomph the HD 7870 can dish out in comparison. Some said in my last video that the HD 6870 wasn't bad and it was the G3220 CPU that was holding it back, so we will see if that's the case, as we are now putting in a more powerful GPU and see if meaningful improvements are apparent, or will it be bottlenecked by the little old Pentium G3220. So swapping out the old and in with the new, let's get on to the benchmarks. In League of Legends, we are pumping out 130 frames per second average, and obviously will be a very enjoyable experience, and you can be competitive if your skills are as high as the FPS this card pumps out. Next up, we have Dota 2 at 1080p medium settings. The card averages 73 FPS, higher than that magical 60 mark. You can probably squeeze out a bit more graphical fidelity and still maintain 60 FPS, but in my opinion, games like these, it's better to have the graphical settings to a modest level so you can actually see what the fuck is going on in a teamfight. In CSGO at 1080p medium settings, we are easily above the 60 FPS mark with averages in the 90s. You will definitely have an enjoyable experience, if you're winning that is. Now in Overwatch, probably the most demanding out of the esports games, the HD 7870 is still able to maintain above 66 frames per second average and only dipping to the 40s in large fights with multiple ultimates going off at the same time. So this card clearly is capable of handling the esports games at 1080p at 60 frames per second average. How will it handle the more recent AAA titles? Let's find out. Doom at 1080p low settings, we were able to pull a respectable 46 frames per second average, which is very decent performance for a card that is 5 years old. But wait, this card supports Vulkan. What happened next blew my mind. We are getting 70 to 80 frames per second on the same 1080p low settings. I couldn't get the averages exactly because Fraps did not work with the Vulkan API. So this kind of shows that perhaps the CPU is the bottleneck here, and I wish more games supported Vulkan. GTA 5 1080p low settings, we got 59 FPS average, just missing the magical mark there, but overall the gameplay was smooth and graphics looked nice even at low settings. The 2GB of VRAM also helps a lot in open world games, as the 1GB VRAM on the HD 6870 last time caused some stuttering. Finally, the big boy Battlefield 1. At 1080p low settings, we got an average of 34 FPS, a figure console gamers would drool over. I wouldn't be quite ready to play multiplayer though, as the less than 60 FPS can become frustrating in a competitive setting, but I would have no problems doing the single player campaign. So there you have it guys, a GPU from 2012 is easily still relevant today for eSport gamers and also can handle the AAA titles. Although I do admit the Pentium G3220 is probably holding it back slightly, given the performance jump when switching to Vulkan, a less CPU dependent API. But for $35, you just cannot complain at what this card has to offer, and I would highly recommend it to anyone playing the aforementioned esports games, but also want to have a reasonable experience in the AAA titles. Remember, my benchmarks are done at 1080p, so if you're looking for more FPS, you can always scale back to 720p. So that's it from me. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.